Part Superman, part Max Headroom, part Fozzie Bear, he's the result of one of the longest ongoing pieces of performance art in history. A Garfield-level pop culture icon, though he would probably take offense to that. Kids love him because he's an adult that's just like them, loud, obnoxious, and confused about how things work on planet Earth. Hi, I'm Dan Larson, and this is the history of ALF. Thank you to Magic Spoon for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description below and use code TOYGALAXY for $5 off your own 4-pack box today. New year, new you. If you've got any health and fitness goals related to your New Year's resolution but aren't really sure where to start, you need to try Magic Spoon as a low-carb, high-protein, and 0-gram sugar alternative. If you want to cut down on carbs or sugar, trying to eat healthier, the cereal you ate when you were 10 might not work for you today. Magic Spoon has 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving. Also only 140 calories. It's keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low-carb. Look, fruity-flavored cereal is my favorite, has been since I was a kid, but Magic Spoon isn't just fruit-flavored. Build your own variety pack from frosted, peanut butter, maple waffle, and a whole bunch of other awesome flavors. They even drop limited edition flavors all the time, and now ship to Canada and the UK. Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Use my code TOYGALAXY for $5 off and build your very own 4-pack box. Go to magicspoon.com/TOYGALAXY to save $5 today. Thanks again to Magic Spoon. ALF is a character created and performed by Paul Fusco since 1984. For nearly 40 years, ALF has starred in television shows, cartoons, advertising campaigns. His likeness and personality have been licensed for video games, comic books, and toys. He is a brand character that was born self-aware. ALF is ALF's product. There are 3 levels of ALF reality. The first and most well-known is the ALF from his 1986 television series, where he is Gordon Shumway, crash-landed on Earth after the destruction of his home planet Melmac, where he previously served as an orbit guard. He lives with the Tanner family, avoiding the US military, who are trying to track him down, likely to experiment on him. Named ALF by Willie Tanner, who described him as an alien life form. ALF is nearly 300 years old and lives in a laundry basket next to the washing machine. The second is his cameo and guest appearances that sustain the illusion of his existence as a real individual in our world, that he is a real actor who merely landed the part on the 1986 television series ALF after coming to Earth. This reality suggests that the 1986 TV show is a fictionalization of events that actually happened in our world at some point. He does eat cats, he is from the destroyed planet Melmac, but otherwise, he's just a guy here on Earth trying to secure his next gig and pay his bills like the rest of us. He's as real as Max Headroom, Kermit the Frog, or Hulk Hogan. And the third, spoiler alert, is his physical existence as a puppet performed by as few as 1 person to as many as 3. He's part hand puppet, part electronic puppet, part full-body suit. A team effort to bring a character to life while the puppeteers disappear. ALF was created by Paul Fusco in 1984. Paul grew up with a love for television and film and a desire to be a part of it. While he was in college, he earned income as a performing artist, doing things like ventriloquism, puppetry, and magic tricks. Illusions. Long before computer-generated visual effects were good enough to make a character in a television show or movie even remotely lifelike, puppets were a solution for non-human characters. Puppets bring a realism because they are physical objects that the other performers can interact with. From the 1960s into the 1980s, puppets were a big part of the television and movie landscape, particularly with entertainment intended for kids. Jim Henson began using his Muppets in television shows in the 1950s. The Muppets were an integral part of Sesame Street and its success beginning in the 1960s and into the Muppet Show in the 70s, and feature films in the 80s and beyond. Jerry Anderson's Super Mario Nation, not to be confused with Super Mario Nation, created entire worlds inhabited by puppets. Puppets of all kinds show up in movies like Star Wars, The Dark Crystal, and Labyrinth, television shows like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Captain Kangaroo, and Madam's Place. It was in this media environment in the early 80s that Paul Fusco and new friends/business associates Bob Fapiano and Lisa Buckley were able to sign a deal to create new puppet-centric specials for HBO, Showtime, and other networks. Shows like The Crown of Bog, The Valentine's Day That Almost Wasn't, Santa's Magic Toy Bag, and A Thanksgiving Tale. While immersed in the production of these television shows, Fusco put together an alien puppet he called ALF that would become a sort of avatar of obnoxiousness, a joke machine that he workshopped on family and friends. It allowed him to develop that oversized personality that would become ALF's trademark. Disney was interested from the start, but they were also interested in owning it completely. Fusco was not interested in selling. There is only one ALF, and he was inseparable from Fusco. Ownership was never up for negotiation. Fusco brought ALF to big-time Hollywood agent Bernie Brillstein. Upon seeing ALF for the first time, Brillstein was unimpressed and perhaps even a bit insulted that someone would dare bring another puppet act to the guy that had managed Jim Henson since 1960. Bernie knew Kermit the Frog before he was Kermit the Frog, and ALF was no Kermit the Frog. That said, the potential for a huge paycheck through merchandising got Bernie to listen to some ALF shtick, which, at the end, had convinced Bernie that ALF could indeed carry a series, and the time to pitch it was now. ALF, as a television series, was created by Paul Fusco and Tom Patchett. Tom was also being managed by Brillstein and had a history of television and movie development, including several that involved Muppets. They spent the next few years shopping ALF to television studios before finally landing at NBC. NBC had been in last place in the television ratings behind ABC and CBS for years. In 1983, all 9 of NBC's new series face-planted. It opened the door to new opportunities from new creators as NBC president Brandon Tartikoff was willing to take some risks. In 1984, NBC began to turn things around with Punky Brewster, Highway to Heaven, The Cosby Show, V, Hunter, and Miami Vice. The idea of a sitcom starring a puppet was not the most absurd idea, but putting it in a primetime slot for an adult audience was. All it took was a single meeting with Tartikoff and a few other NBC executives. Fusco, Patchett, and Brillstein told the story of the series, then let ALF himself seal the deal. After seeing Fusco's performance as ALF, Tartikoff was confident and ordered a pilot for the 1986 season. Part of the value of ALF, or as Thu Adams might say, the value, is the idea that Fusco and his team treat ALF as though he is real. They go out of their way to hide their own performances, to never let anyone see ALF as an inanimate object. When ALF is on set, he is alive. During production, Fusco demanded that no one refer to the puppet. They had to call it ALF, and that he was an alien. Not a puppet, never a puppet. Everyone had to agree that they would not speak publicly about how the magic, the illusion, was created. When shooting, this was managed through a 2-tiered set. The upper floor for the human actors and a lower floor roughly 4 feet deeper, hidden under trapdoor panels, for the ALF puppeteers who operated ALF above their heads. This made for a treacherous stage for the non-puppet actors if they happened to step in the wrong direction at the wrong time. ALF was performed by Fusco, who was responsible for ALF's right hand, mouth, and voice. Lisa Buckley was ALF's left arm. Bob Fapiano took care of ALF's ear, eyebrow, and eyelid expressions through a remote control panel. Whenever ALF was shown full body, perhaps running across the room or trotting over to join the family photo in the season 1 opening theme, he was played by Mishu Mazaros wearing an ALF suit. It was a complicated show, technically, to make. The number of things that could go wrong with ALF's performance, the need to reset floor panels to work around the unusual nature of the set and the puppeteers meant more takes and longer shoots than usual. It was physically and emotionally taxing for all the human actors, as many times a single episode took over 20 hours to shoot. Up against ABC's MacGyver and CBS's Kate and Allie, ALF hit the air on Monday, September 22, 1986 in a self-titled episode. ALF gets his very own theme song by Alf Clausen. We see his spacecraft and meet the Tanner family for the first time. Willie, played by Max Wright, Kate, played by Anne Shadeen, their 2 kids, Lynn, played by Andrea Elson, and Brian, played by Benji Gregory, and of course, Lucky, the ironically named cat. The series is built around a familiar formula of the unwanted house guest combined with a stranger in a new and unfamiliar world. The Tanner family and ALF must learn how to live together while doing their best to hide him from the US government alien task force and neighbors like the Ochmoneks, played by John LaMotta and Liz Sheridan. The pilot fell short of Tartikoff's expectations. It was his very young daughter's excitement that convinced him to roll the dice and go for a full series. Despite the intent to produce a show for adults, it was the kids that would embrace ALF and buy into Fusco's dream of making ALF real. Tartikoff's daughter was right, and ALF was a strong series right out of the gate. Not the biggest show on TV, but definitely the best in its time slot. And that viewership, its appeal to kids, meant that the writers would have to soften some of ALF's sharper edges. ALF was a fully grown adult dog bear, Aardvark Alien, he was an orbit guard. Unfortunately, the network didn't like the idea of him drinking alcohol. That's not the kind of behavior that's going to sell bed sheets and dolls to the moms of America. On Melmac, cats were considered a delicacy, but after Alf attempted to put a cat in the microwave, something that kids at home watching tried to emulate, the writers had to phase that out as well. Another incident involved a child trying to create a jacuzzi with an electric mixer in the bathtub, just like Alf. That required the production to not only issue a statement reminding kids not to do that kind of stuff, but also reshoot the scene with a hand-cranked egg beater. A few incidents aside, Alf was a legitimate pop culture phenomenon. Like the story on the show, from seemingly out of nowhere, he had arrived with the force of a crashed spaceship, carried across the galaxy by the energy of an exploding planet. And I know because I saw his effect on people firsthand. I was 10 years old in 5th grade when ALF first aired. Some kid in my class whose name I didn't even know went from being a kid whose name I didn't even know to the most popular kid in class because he could draw ALF really good, which, I mean, drawing ALF, it's not that hard. ALF has a very distinct profile. But back then, I didn't understand why being able to draw ALF was such a big deal. I could draw stuff too. What I missed about it was that it wasn't about how good I or that kid could draw ALF. It was about the love for ALF that everyone shared. Who's the most popular kid in class now, eh? ALF was a hit with the kids, and that meant a cartoon wasn't far behind. In 1987, ALF, the animated series, began airing on Saturday mornings on NBC. Produced by Deke Entertainment, Saban, and Alien Productions, the name under which all ALF performances are created, it's a prequel series that shows what life was like for Gordon Shumway on Melmac before its tragic destruction by nuclear weapons. ALF is never addressed as ALF because his name is Gordon. The cast includes his sister Augie, his girlfriend Rhonda, and a villain named, this can't be right, Larson Petty. Larson Petty. I'm not taking it personally, it's just, I don't know. Sounds dumb. Time for a game of Is It Canon? With the premiere TV show in its 2nd season, a ratings delight. Where does a Saturday morning cartoon fit into the overall mythology? How reliable are these stories depicted? Is it canon? Yes! Despite none of the other characters from the TV series appearing for obvious reasons, ALF, Gordon, was voiced by Paul Fusco. Each episode opened and closed with live-action segments of ALF. The question is, which canon is it canon to? 1986 TV show ALF or the actor ALF from our world? I don't know. A year later, ALF the animated series spun off a second animated series called ALF Tales, which was a series of fantasy stories featuring characters from ALF. Robin Hood, Jack and the Beanstalk, Peter Pan, Paul Fusco, once again to play ALF. Is it canon? No, it's not, and it was never intended to be. They're just entertaining animated segments that are fantasy even in the world of the cartoons and ALF's own reality. It's just another jewel in the crown of the pop culture ALF phenomenon.
Burger King has been invaded by ALF puppets. Please help.
Hey, I'm hungry. Yo, want a Whopper? No problem.
Just $2.99 on a plain broiled Whopper or large sandwich gets you your own ALF. 4 different furry aliens. Each comes with his own record.
'Cause we're doing the Melmac drop.
These aliens are friendly, but they're getting out of hand. Hurry, just $2.99 gets another ALF out of here.
We do it like you do it at Burger King. Where's your part?
Merchandising was the thing that wrote ALF's ticket to the big time, and there was plenty of it. In 1987 alone, ALF merchandise totaled over $250 million. Coleco produced a 22-inch plush doll that accounted for $85 million of that by itself. Kids loved ALF and wanted to bring him home. Topps produced a series of trading cards. There were watches, skateboards, cake molds, ALF ice cream, an ALF telephone, lunchboxes, pajamas, sleeping bags, play tents, board games, alarm clocks, toothbrushes, Halloween costumes, PVC figures. ALF's poster outsold John Bon Jovi's. In 1988, Burger King kids' meals included ALF hand puppets featuring ALF as a chef, a rock star, a baseball player, and a surfer. Each puppet also came with a cardboard record with parody songs like Take Me, ALF to the Ball Game, sung by ALF himself. In 1987, Marvel Comics, under their Star Comics 4Kids imprint, began publishing an ALF series. It ran for 50 issues over 4 years, but is it canon? No. I'll admit this one is a bit of a gray area. While it does parallel the live-action TV series and includes the Tanner family, it exists in a place closer to the cartoon than the live-action series. ALF has a lot more freedom to go on adventures that aren't possible given the limitations of the physical puppet and the stated intent by Paul Fusco to make sure that ALF was the only science fiction or extraterrestrial element in the show. 1987 also saw the first ALF video games. ALF: The First Adventure was available for Commodore 64, IBM, and Apple II. In 1988, ALF was helping kids do their homework with ALF US Geography, ALF's Thinking Skills, ALF's World of Worlds, and Add and Subtract with ALF. 1989 brought ALF home on the Sega Master System. In 1987, ALF had a single released outside the US called ALF Stuck on Earth. A musician named Ben Liebrand mixed together a bunch of sound bites from the TV series, put a beat behind it, and made it to number 4 in the Netherlands, number 3 in New Zealand. In 1989, Tommy Piper, ALF's German voice actor, took a duet with Amelie Sandman, the German voice of ALF's girlfriend Rhonda, to the top of the pop charts with a song that translates to "Hello ALF, this is Rhonda." It spent 12 weeks on the German pop charts. Ratings for the original primetime ALF TV series peaked in season 2, seating him as high as 10th overall. Some episodes were written by a pre-Simpsons duo of Al Jean and Mike Rice, they, along with the rest of the team, trying to figure out ways to grow ALF's world while handcuffed by the confines of his isolation. But over time, the idea got old. There are only so many dream sequences and blind characters that you can introduce before running out of viable ideas. By season 3, ALF had moved down to 15th place, and by season 4, 39th. That kind of precipitous drop gets you put on a television ventilator Saturday and Sunday night time slots. After 101 episodes, at the end of season 4, ALF ended on an unintentional cliffhanger. Yes, it was the last episode of the season, and yes, it was meant to be a cliffhanger, but the production thought they were either going to get picked up for a 5th season or, at the very least, have the opportunity to put together a 1-hour finale to bring closure to the whole thing. Unfortunately, the television world was changing on multiple fronts, all of which impacted ALF. Brandon Tartikoff was leaving NBC to become the chairman of Paramount Pictures. Any promises that Tartikoff made to the ALF team were no longer valid once his successor took over. The bigger picture was that deregulation had finally come to network television production. Efforts to repeal decades-old laws were put into motion by the Reagan administration in 1983 were about to become a reality. It used to be that networks weren't allowed to own the shows they broadcast. There were concerns about the monopolization of the airwaves. But things had changed a lot. There were more networks, more shows, and a whole lot more time spent by viewers watching television. Cable had already shaken things up beyond the usefulness of the laws that existed. As season 4 of ALF drew to a close in 1990, it was clear where the future was heading. NBC, with a new president in place, was looking to start producing shows that it owned and therefore could see more profit from, rather than continuing to get partial earnings from other studios' creations. And not for nothing, but even if the rules hadn't changed, ALF was more expensive to produce than the average sitcom. Longer days meant more people on the payroll for more hours. 39th place wasn't going to get you a priority budget. ALF would ultimately be replaced by a show that utilized a similar premise: a raucous individual arriving in a new world, transplanted far from home, a family with no choice but to learn how to live with their new guest, whose life got turned upside down. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air starring Will Smith. Whatever the circumstances, the rest of the cast seemed content to move on with their careers, some more than others. In a 2012 article by The Hollywood Reporter, Ann Shadeen said that the cast couldn't have dealt with one more season. Max Wright was hugely eager to have it over with. Legend has it that on the final day of shooting, the moment the director said cut, Max grabbed his stuff, got in his car, and left. Never looking back, no goodbye, no nothing. After a 6-year hiatus in February of 1996, ALF fans finally got some closure. This time it was on ABC with a 90-minute TV movie called Project ALF that picks up where the original TV series left off. The US military had finally tracked him down and transported him to a secret base. This was the fulfillment of Fusco and Patchett's original intent for a 5th season. The narrative of the original series had reached its creative limit within the Tanner household. It desperately needed a makeover with a new location, new characters, new relationship dynamics. ALF as prisoner who ends up running the whole joint because he's just so dang charismatic. Paul Fusco was back as the voice and puppeteer for ALF, as well as co-writing with original co-creator Tom Patchett. The cast also included Martin Sheen as Colonel Milfoil, who is intent on killing ALF. Miguel Ferrer plays a former NASA scientist trying to regain his reputation by exposing ALF to the world. Jensen Daggett and William O'Leary play Major Hill and Captain Mulligan respectively, 2 members of the Air Force risking their own lives and careers to help ALF escape. The question is it canon? Yes! It picks up where the original series ended. It mentions the Tanner family giving closure to all of the unresolved plot lines. Despite the negative response from fans, the show was written and produced by the original creative team behind ALF and stars Paul Fusco as the voice and performance of ALF. That said, while it did tie up the loose ends, it did not reignite interest in a full series for ALF. ALF would be sustained by cameo and guest appearances for the next 6 years that we're not going to go into any detail here. The New Love Boat, The Cindy Margolis Show, among others. In 2002, he showed up at NBC's 75th anniversary special, sitting next to Michael Gross of Family Ties fame, 2 seats over from David Hasselhoff's Michael Knight. Tina Fey, who worked on the special as a producer, told Conan O'Brien that ALF's people and the special technical accommodations that had to be made for ALF to appear, even so briefly, was her biggest frustration. Hiding the puppeteers, building a trapdoor so that he could be immediately removed from the scene the moment his appearance was completed, answers a lot of questions about why ALF doesn't show up more often. Fusco has addressed the challenges behind live appearances. They had attempted to shoot the original TV series live, but the amount of time between takes sucked all the energy out of the audience. Maintaining the illusion that ALF was real was a job in and of itself, a technical tax on any production that wanted to include him. It's the reason ALF never hosted Saturday Night Live despite NBC executives offering it to Fusco. Maintaining the illusion was too important to Fusco, and it cost him other opportunities. Before he passed away, Jim Henson himself was a fan and wanted to have ALF on a Muppets project. Get him and Kermit and Miss Piggy in a scene together. Fusco turned it down because he didn't want there to be any confusion. Even though he desperately wanted to work with Jim Henson and Frank Oz, he didn't want kids to think ALF was a Muppet or a Fraggle or anything but a real alien visiting Earth. ALF's next shot came in 2004 with ALF's hit talk show airing on the Nickelodeon spin-off network TV Land. A live-ish talk show with celebrity guests like Bryan Cranston, Joan Rivers, Henry Winkler, Tom Green, and Joe Mantegna. But even with the Ed McMahon as his sidekick, ALF only managed 7 episodes before being canceled. Today it is regarded as one of the worst talk shows in history. Your mileage may vary, but it is certainly one of the shortest. The question is it canon? No. Canon doesn't really apply here. This is an example of ALF as a real-world actor performing in a show unrelated to the television narrative that began with the 1986 series. No continuation of the story, but certainly illusion sustained. ALF's guest appearances and cameos continued, including a 2007 spot on Fox's The O'Reilly Factor as the TV icon of the week. The appearance is hacked to ribbons and features more clips from the original series than modern footage. But it does shed new light on Project ALF and its canon status. After reviewing the tape, it appears that a re-ruling may be in order. ALF is asked what he's been up to since the original series ended and completely avoids talking about 1996's Project ALF as if it never happened. Is this Paul Fusco trying to rewrite history? Trying to appease the fans? Is it canon? In 2010, an outtake reel from the original 1986 series surfaced online. It featured some standard bloopers, but also clips of Paul Fusco as ALF using racist words, pretending to have Tourette's syndrome, and making sexual comments to Andrea Elson, the actress who played Lynn Tanner. Producer Steve Lamar dismissed concerns over the clip as being from a time when things weren't so ridiculously PC. The clip was pulled from the internet initially, but has since been re-uploaded and isn't that hard to find if you want to judge for yourself. You can watch ALF today in the privacy of your own home. From 2004 to 2006, Lionsgate Home Entertainment released the original series on DVD. They are the shorter versions of the episodes released for syndication, and some episodes that feature copyright music have had those songs removed. Lionsgate wanted to use the longer versions of the episodes, but the master tapes had degraded too much to make it financially viable to repair them, so they had to make do with the syndicated versions. However, starting in 2009, Warner Home Media released the full-length network broadcast versions on DVD outside the US. ALF is currently available for purchase digitally online through Google Play, iTunes, Vudu, YouTube, and Starz. In 2006, Lionsgate released the first 9 episodes of ALF the Animated Series on DVD under the name ALF Animated Adventures, and the first 7 episodes of ALF Tales as ALF and the Beanstalk and Other Classic Fairy Tales. Project ALF was released on DVD, but you're gonna have to pay up for it. Otherwise, you can watch it now for free, unofficially, here on YouTube. In May of 2012, Paul Fusco announced that he was shopping an ALF movie idea to studios. In August of 2012, Sony Pictures Animation announced that they had acquired the rights to ALF and were planning a CGI live-action hybrid project. ALF creators Fusco and Patchett would be joined as producers by Jordan Kerner, who had produced movies like Less Than Zero, The Mighty Ducks, 2006's Charlotte's Web, and the 2011 Smurfs movie. 6 years later, in 2018, Warner Bros. Announced an ALF reboot, putting ALF back on Earth with a new family. That same year, it was announced as canceled. In May of 2020, Deadline reported that the reboot is not dead, but currently in development at HBO Max. ALF hasn't had a regular gig since ALF's hit talk show in 2004, but he's maintained his public awareness through guest appearances. He was on Good Morning America in 2011, Mr. Robot in 2016. ALF is 265 years old, older than the United States itself. 2021 was the 35th anniversary of his arrival on the planet, the 35th anniversary of ALF's arrival as a pop culture icon. Paul Fusco's commitment to the bit has kept ALF as alive as ever, if not as relevant. ALF is certainly a Puppet Hall of Fame first ballot entry if he ever decides to retire. There is a chance that another great ALF era is still ahead of us should a new series or feature film materialize. But for now, he exists in the space between realities, for as long as we want the illusion to be real, as alive as we believe him to be. Oh, my butt, the stool.
Told you to get the one at IKEA.
Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who already are. Thank you again to Magic Spoon for sponsoring this video. Check us out on Twitch at twitch.tv/toygalaxy if you're in the position to help the channel grow. If you would like early access to the videos ad-free and early, I gotta fix that, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/toygalaxy and let us know in the comments down below if ALF still lives in your heart. Are you anxious to see him, like so many other relics of the 80s, come back to prominence lo these 35 years later? Or are you okay letting him drift into the mists of nostalgia, knowing that the love you once had can never be the same? Are you waiting for his return in Pog form as was once prophesied? Are you ready for CG ALF on HBO Max?